I do want to start off with the government shutdown and the potential economic ramifications and I guess potential market ramifications. I know it's still early, particularly because we haven't actually reached the deadline, but is this something markets should start to pay more attention to?
Well, the rule of thumb is that every week the government shuts down, shaves a half a percentage point off of GDP. And wow, I mean, that would wipe out all GDP from the fourth quarter if that actually happens. So clearly, that's something that we have to pay attention to. I mean, we had a record government shutdown, under the Trump administration, just a little more than 1 month, and that was mitigated because they actually allowed payments to the military, which I don't think have yet been authorized. So it looks, if it's a full shutdown, there's going to be economic impact.
Yeah, and we should just point out for our viewers, we are learning that some members of Congress now appear to be trying to advance a bill that would at least address the military agencies and some of the more critical law enforcement and defense agencies, so that doesn't happen. But let's say we do get there, Professor. There's this idea right now that the last few government shutdowns we had occurred in a much different economic environment. We're dealing with high interest rates. We're dealing with maybe a potential economic inflection that could be to the downside here, and I'm wondering how much that could complicate things.
Oh, it definitely complicates things. I mean, look, we have the UAW strike. We have the highest interest rates in decades. And still monetary stringency. Look at this is a critical time for the Federal Reserve. Are they going to get economic statistics? There's another FOMC meeting on November 1st, and there's a question of how much data will they have to act. So yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty, and we can only hope that some sort of resolution comes to clear this up with all those other uncertainties that are facing the market.
And it was interesting, Professor. We heard from Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari earlier in the week saying that if there is a prolonged shutdown, it could actually do some of the Fed's work for the Fed in terms of, you think about the economic hit, what that means for inflation. What are your views on that, though? Could this actually make the Fed's job easier in some ways, even if they are flying blind, rather, from a data perspective?
Well, I think it's a sad thing to say. Let's hurt the government to slow down the economy, because really, this idea that it's just a matter of the economy moving too fast that is causing inflation, only has very tenuous support. I mean, the inflationary pressures, first of all, oil, as you know, going up a lot is really due to a supply shock rather than any sort of increase in demand. And we want a strong economy that produces goods. That's not necessarily inflationary. So I hope we don't use that as the need for a slowdown in economic activity.
Well, to your point on oil, I find that really interesting, again, that this is a supply shock driving oil prices. The Fed can't control that. And of course, they pay attention to core figures, which strip out energy prices. But then you think about the read through into inflation expectations, which the Fed does care about. How are you thinking about that dynamic?
Well, and clearly you're right. And, the bondholder doesn't care about core. He cares about overall inflation because that's what erodes his or her purchasing power. So, we can't just say that core inflation is the only thing that's affecting, with the bond yield. It's overall inflation. I mean, we got mortgage rates that are north, I think, of 7.5%. We've had a slowdown in the home buying index. We had a slowdown in housing starts last month. Now, it's not as bad as it was, 6 months ago. But, if we have another housing slowdown in the midst of a government slowdown, it seems very, very hard to talk about positive economic activity in the fourth quarter.